and welcome to episode 7 with Frank Toub here. Thanks so much for taking your time to do this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks
for
having me.
Yeah, you're the first person I've interviewed who's not in my class, so this is awesome to get some elder experience, potentially. So, first question, just to start things off with, what have you been doing this summer?
So the first half of the summer, first 6 weeks, I was with Baker Donaldson, full service firm in the city, kind of regional southeast presence.
Yeah.
And for the second half, I had a week off then, and for the second half, I've been with Judge Richardson. He's a federal district judge for the Middle District of Tennessee.
That's awesome. So we were saying earlier you had a full packed summer.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Going all the way the Friday until school starts. So,
yeah. So
no rest for the wicked.
Did you start pretty much after you took your last final? Did you have any time between that, or
no? I don't think so. I think maybe there was a week or two.
Yeah.
Which at the time probably felt very restful, but
exactly,
but
right.
now that it's so far gone, probably feel like I could use some rest before school starts.
But the good thing is you're going into your victory lap. Like, this is it. Like, you've made it.
I hope.
You know what I mean? So you know, like the tunnels. I had a professor that said you can see the tunnel or the light at the end of the tunnel. He's like, just you want to hope it's not a train coming at you.
Yeah.
But I think in your case, you see the light, so it's all good.
Yeah. I hope so.
Sweet. So going way back, what made you want to pursue a legal career? If you had to pinpoint maybe a certain event or however your story goes.
So I don't know that I could kind of pinpoint a certain event specifically. I went to Penn State for my undergrad. I studied electrical engineering. Kind of like in high school, I was very science and math heavy. Preferred those things. So I went to Penn State, studied engineering, graduated in 2014, started working for a company I had interned with, and I love the people I worked with, and the work was okay, not maybe the most exciting.
Yeah.
But it was very monotonous, I guess is the best way I could, describe it. And I was doing like a project management certificate with Lehigh to become like a certified project management professional. Cool. And for one of the classes, I had to read a book, Who Moved My Cheese? And it's like this short, it's a book is a strong term. It's like a short story. And it's about like breaking out of like the mold that you're, these like cycles that like we get into.
Yeah.
And, I started thinking about like, what would I be doing if I like wasn't just kind of like on this like, high school, go to college, graduate, and like what would I be doing if I was like doing what I thought would be fulfilling to me?
Yeah.
And I'd always been interested in joining the military. And so I started looking into it, and basically just under a year later I quit my job and joined the Army. And I basically figured, after if I didn't stay in the Army, I would at least have a GI Bill.
Yeah.
Right. And so when it started to become apparent I wasn't going to stay in the Army, for 20 years, I started thinking about kind of what I would do after the Army. And I'd been considering doing a program where the Army sends you to law school. They pay for your law school, you incur more service, and and that was interesting to me because young soldiers get themselves into trouble.
Exactly, right.
You're 18, you have some money, you have some freedom, they get into trouble. And so I was, interested in kind of doing that. And so when it became kind of, like I said, apparent I wouldn't stay in the Army, I just decided to kind of do it on my own after I left.
Yeah, that's a really awesome path. Like, I feel like that's so different than anybody else I've talked to.
Yeah, definitely your little hand motion meandering for sure. I know we'll talk about this later, but if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would be here right now, I probably wouldn't have said that, you know. I would have said maybe law school, maybe an MBA. I just don't quite know.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, going back to, I know, like when you're young, you get in trouble or you can't get in trouble. My younger brother was in the Army, and he didn't do anything bad per se, but he was like, yeah, like this crazy thing happening, you know, like that, these people I'm with are just, you know, crazy. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So I went to basic training when I was 27, you know, and you have some guys who are there, you know, you can go when you're 17, basically in the summer before your senior year of high school. You know, so for some of us, there's a 10-year age gap, and I wasn't even the oldest one there.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, you're just talking about a whole different level of maturity. Actually, wait, I was 26 because it was in 27. Yeah, I was. Okay. I had not turned 27, so I was 26. Okay. Still, yeah.
So yeah, that's a
just
huge
a whole
age
different
difference.
level of maturity.
Yeah.
You know,
So, and I'm curious because this has come up in other people's interviews. So, like when COVID happened and we were locked down for however long, like did that kind of sway your thought? Like, were you able to be alone with your thoughts necessarily, or have you already made up your mind by that point of
about coming to law school?
Yeah, about coming to law school.
No, I wasn't gonna kind of let that you know, sway my decision.
Yeah,
and you know, I'll give you maybe an example, because when I was, you know, kind of looking into joining the Army, it was 2016 election year.
Yeah.
And, you know, people kind of thought it was a foregone conclusion that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and, you know, whatever. And, you know, what people argued about who would be more hawkish, right?
Yeah.
And when Trump was elected, I had people kind of like say to me, like, are you still gonna, like, yes, I'm doing what I was gonna do.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not, you know, those are,
makes sense.
You know, I gotta do what I want to do. So
yeah, that's just cool. I just thought, because like for me, like I knew I wanted to go to law school. It just sped up the process for me a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I want to go, but like at that point I was still a high school teacher, so I was like, man, this is a good exit point. So that was kind of my thought process.
Yeah. So I basically I was getting out of the Army. You know, I was pretty sure it was going to be 2020.
Right.
And I guess I didn't have a backup plan if I didn't get
exactly
to law school. So I kind of put all my eggs in that basket.
Yeah. Well, it worked out for you. So
yeah, fortunately.
So you have a lot of like previous experience, and so leading up to our next question, do you have any unique skills or unique experiences that you think set you up for success in law school?
So I think one thing that was formative for me in school in general, you know, I was like, in high school, I was like a student. I did well, and I, you know, didn't put in a ton of effort, and, you know, I just thought I was good at school. And my first semester in college, I got a D in Calc 1, and it was like a reality check.
Yeah.
And so I basically, you know, ideally I would have went into college knowing how to study and kind of how I learn and do that. And I had to kind of figure that out throughout college. Yeah. And fortunately, I think engineering is kind of similar in that it just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I was used to being kind of in the library for, you know, hours at a time, you know, because that's what worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely had friends in my engineering classes who didn't do that, and they did much better. But for me, it was kind of like a very formative experience of how what do I need to do to learn. And it probably took me another year and a half to really figure it out.
Right.
You know, and it was probably my junior year before I finally started getting A's and B's and no C's.
Yeah.
You know, but that, I think, understanding, you know, kind of what works for me. Now, obviously, it is different in law school, right?
Right, yeah.
It's not like anything you've ever done. Which I feel like leads, the other thing is having worked kind of full-time career type jobs, like you said, being a teacher, you know, I understood kind of that, like, the 9 to 5 thing isn't always how like a career works, and I just knew I was going to treat this the same way.
Yeah.
To the extent I could do 9 to 5, I would love to do that, but the days that it was going to take 10 or 12 hours, I knew they would be there, and that I would just have to kind of suck them up.
Yeah.
And maybe it turns out most of them are 10 or 12 hours.
Exactly, right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I'm really thankful that I was able to work before I went to school. One, because I had that little buffer of like not going straight through school for 7 years.
Oh, yeah.
Which for everyone we go to school with who has done that, like more power to them. That's insane.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful I had that, and also it kind of gave me a reality check. Like I could step back and be like, oh, like I thought in terms of like this is how much I'm paying for this school. Like
right.
Like I'm paying like this much per class, and like I should make sure I'm focused and putting the time in. So
yeah, and I feel like maybe it is a little different for someone who returns to school.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like even if you really do want to go to law school, but you kind of like do like K to JD.
Yeah.
All is school.
Yeah.
And so like for us, we made a conscious decision to come back.
Yeah.
And so I think that does
That's
kind
true.
of like you said, it changes your mindset a little bit
does.
as to what kind of effort you're going to put in.
Yeah, it kind of changed my whole perspective on like, school's not like there's life outside these four walls.
Right. Yeah.
Which I know they tell us that all the time in class, but sometimes if you haven't seen it firsthand, like you don't know like what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
So and I think it helps too it helped me with like interviews as well, and just like because I interviewed at like 10 schools trying to get a job, and like I knew that kind of professional experience, so it was awesome. The one thing that kind of got me, and maybe this got you too, is like the age difference, because I know you said like you kind of experienced some of that in basic.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm only 26, and some of my classmates are 23, but I was just curious, just riffing off this, did you feel like, was it weird coming back for you, or?
Yeah, it definitely was. And the funny thing, so I'm 31.
Mm-hmm.
I have a younger brother who's 29.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, because I'm like with some of my friends every day who are say maybe 25 or 26 in school, they just feel older than my younger brother to me, even though it's like a. So in some ways, it totally, you just like become peers, I think, and some of those things go away. But in the beginning, it definitely was an adjustment. Words like yeet, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did have the benefit of, I taught high school, so I was kind of plugged in. I think for me, it was more like my self-consciousness. I was like, what if they found out that I'm like not 23? Like I'm going to be like lame and old, but it was fine. It all worked out. But that is funny because I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me, and so it's the same thing. Like for me, when I see him, he's always going to be like the young child. Like for them, like it doesn't compute when like my classmates are his same age. Yeah, which is interesting. But
and I don't know what it is. It's got to be something psychological.
I think so too.
Yeah, because he's been he went to Full Sail, so he did like a 2-year BA, bachelor's. So he's been out of school for almost a decade.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, he's still
Yeah, and like in some ways, my younger brother's more mature than me because he already has a nice job and a nice house and is about to have a kid. So it's just like man, I'm getting lapped over here, which is funny. But so thinking back, now that you've had 3 years, what's one thing or maybe multiple things that you wish you knew before you started?
Do less 2L year.
Yeah.
I 1L year, they don't really let you do a whole lot. You have prescribed classes. Kind of we were talking about, you have like 14 credits and 15 credits, and everyone's in those same classes and all that. And so 2L year, I wanted to be more involved. I ran for SBA. I wanted to do that. I was fortunate enough to get selected for law review. I was fortunate enough to be selected to be on moot court, and so I was doing all these things, and it just became very overwhelming. Trying to maintain it all. And I Samantha McCaleb was talking about, she hasn't figured out what that limit is yet.
Yeah.
And when you do, you do find it, you find it. And so fall, particularly last year, was very stressful because I had bit off more than I could chew. So that would definitely be one thing. And I think that this year, the 3L year, I have kind of pared back some of those things so that it'll be more manageable.
Yeah.
And I have less credits, which is so that's probably what I would say. Yeah.
So I know you said it's different for everybody, but how did you personally manage all that? That's a lot of work and a lot of
not well.
Okay.
I feel like I was kind of just trying to do like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Because it was just like so overwhelming. So like your draft for your note, I think, was due sometime in November, but our moot court competition was like October. So like I didn't work on my note virtually until November.
Right.
And then I was just like trying to cram it in. Fortunately, my advisor, Professor Brandon, he was awesome.
He's great.
He basically, I would email him ahead of time and just say, I think I need some more time for whatever it was. And he would always, give me more time or meet with me to talk about it. So that was very helpful. But yeah, I kind of just tried to like focus on one thing at a time. But I don't know that was the best. Yeah.
Well, I think too, like, communication is important. Like you were saying, you were emailing Professor Brandon. Like, maybe when I was an undergrad, especially at the beginning, I'd be afraid to email my professors or afraid to like approach them with a question. Like in my mind, I already knew how they were going to answer. Like, oh, they're going to say no to this. But like, you don't know until you ask. And I think if you communicate, they're going to be more likely to work with you. And
that's a good point, because when I was an undergrad, I never really took advantage of like office hours or asking questions during class or after class, whatever it was. But and maybe this is kind of part of like coming back to school later, is now, I mean, if I have a question, I'm going to ask it if I need to during class, or at least after class. Or if I need something, I always go to office hours. I always review my exams, even if I did well in a class. So do that. It is something I would tell myself. Definitely do those things. Take advantage of it, because at the end of the day, they don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And there's 100 and so many of us, and one of them.
Yeah.
So unless you ask,
that is true, because like having an education degree, like it's hard to know like when students are struggling. I mean, I was a band director, so it was obvious for me when students were struggling.
You could hear it.
I could hear it. I'd be like, Cindy, you're a little flat there. But it is true. Like, if we ever did any like paper exams, or if I gave them homework or whatever, like, they're not going to speak up, especially in high school. Like, they're going to pretend like they know everything. But and that was one of the things I told them. I was like, you can't like assume that like when you go to college that they're going to be able to read your mind. Like, it's important to communicate and just to kind of ask those questions.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Like there's no such thing as a dumb question, I guess. I mean, maybe there is, but I mean, if it helps you out or helps somebody else out, it's not.
If you have a question, I almost certainly someone else is thinking this.
Exactly, right.
And so I laugh, but there really are not many dumb questions.
There's not many, and even if I felt self-conscious about asking a question, I would just go up after class,
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm like, man, this was like from a while ago. Like, should I ask this now? Like, no, I'm going to ask later.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't help. But that's one thing that I didn't do a lot of first year. But then I started cranking it up, and I was like, okay, like, things are going more smoothly. So.
Yeah, and I think most people find that kind of 1L fall is bumpier,
Yes.
And maybe, spring you figure a little bit out, and then I definitely think 2L, for me at least, was where I really felt like I kind of hit my stride and like was able to, but still do less.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I'm going to write that down because I'm going into my second year. So this is the question that everyone either loves or hates.
Everyone hates.
Everyone hates it. I always send the questions out beforehand. Everyone's like, I know what's next. So I throw out the year 5 years. It can be however many years you want, just to create a picture. Mm-hmm. So let's say 5 years from now, what are you doing in your legal career?
So, and in thinking about this, I started thinking about what was I doing 5 years ago and what was I doing 5 years before that. Mm-hmm. You know, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, I was in my undergrad at Penn mm-hmm. State. And if you had asked me 5 years later if I would have been in the Army, I would have said no.
Yeah.
You know, mm-hmm. That would be cool, but I'm not going to do that. I'm on, like I said, I'm on this path. Go to college, get a job, you know. And kind of when I joined the Army, like I said, if you'd asked me 5 years in the future if I would be in Nashville going to law school, I'd be like, maybe, but so that's all to really hedge on what I'm about to say. Mm-hmm. 5 years from now, I just accepted a job with Baker Donaldson.
Sweet.
So, you know, kind of your first 2 years, you don't have to. So I'll be in the litigation group. Mm-hmm. You don't have to pick a practice area. You know, you kind of work with all the practice areas and figure out who you like to work with and what you like working on and mm-hmm. things like that. So, 5 years from now, ideally, that'll be figured out.
Exactly.
You know, and I'll be, you know, kind of working in the practice group that I enjoy. But I think kind of like long-term career-wise, you know, I want to try and move towards like an appellate practice.
Okay, yeah.
I've really enjoyed kind of, you know, this is something I similarly feel like people love or hate. Mm-hmm. Dean's Cup.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and doing oral argument, people love it or hate it. And for me, you know, I say that doing moot court, you know, the brief is the necessary evil that everyone, and I say everyone because it's how I feel, that everyone puts up with just to be able to do the thrill of oral argument.
Yeah.
You know? And so hopefully kind of long term, that's what kind of my goals are. You know, and now I'll be really interested 5 years from now to think back and look back and see how accurate or, you know.
Yeah. I think that's a really big thing. Like, I definitely didn't think this way. I had a mentor in undergrad where I student taught, and I still do this every day. He's like, when I was your age, and I was like 23 at the time, he's like, I wish I journaled more, and I wish I thought ahead more. And like he's like, not to say that I regret any decision I made, but like he's like, I would love to like know what 23-year-old me was thinking, or 26-year-old me was like those points. And he was like 45 at the time, so he's like, I mean, I think I know what I was thinking, but there's no telling. So he's the one that turned me on to like think like 5 years chunks. Like it might change, but at least then, you know, when you write it down, you can go back and at least have a nice giggle. Like, oh, I thought I was gonna do this.
Well, and you know, especially if you make a good habit of it, you can kind of follow that path and like, you know, the things that are happening to you that are affecting those, you know, over the 5 years, how that changes or doesn't change or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There was a period where I was good, you know, for about a year. I kept a journal and I just, you know, you lose track of time and you know, I have not since. But I did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's not something that I like put like set boundaries on. I'm just like, well, I feel like writing today. You know, I don't like make it force a habit. But I can't believe we didn't talk about this before. But you're a writer. You like writing. You love that.
You know, I don't consider myself a writer, to be honest.
but still.
You know, assuming you're talking about the legal fiction.
Yes, that's awesome.
Thank you. I was completely. I was at a loss for words when they called me, you know, and said I had won. I wanted to do the legal fiction workshop with Professor. So it's funny. I actually emailed her ahead of time, and I was like, I want to do this. I just don't know if I have time. You know? This was after the fall. It's in the spring. After I had felt like I had done too much. Yeah. And you know, I talked to her about it, and so I decided to do it. And I wanted to do it kind of for a couple reasons. One was I just think you're a better writer the more you write.
Yeah.
And kind of legal writing is so formulaic, you don't get a chance to be creative with it.
Right.
But I think that that you can improve your legal writing, the more vividly you can create this picture.
Yeah. And
so that was one of the reasons I wanted to kind of do the creative writing thing, was to, just, practice some of that, and then the other thing was, I just felt like, I feel like I'm not a creative person, which is so funny. And so I just wanted to kind of practice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really cool, though. I think there's a parallel, because in music, the more instruments you learn, the better you get at your original instrument. Mm-hmm. So it might be similar, the more you branch out and write more fiction or more different styles of writing, you can take bits and pieces into your legal writing, which is awesome.
Yeah. And, I'm hopeful that I can find a way to maybe just, continue to do it for me, not trying to write anything that's getting published, but just for me to, because I really enjoyed the process of it, and so hopefully I can, that'll be kind of my for lack of a better term, my journaling maybe.
Yeah, that'd be really good, especially just to get your thoughts out and kind of write it more. Mm-hmm. But that is something that I'm going into this year wanting to be more mindful of myself and be more. People use words like mindfulness and present, but but just being aware of because I have heard you're saying some horror stories of people take too much out of their plate second year, but just for me, journaling and all that is just kind of a way to check in with myself, because that's something that doesn't happen often enough.
Mine went out spring, the law school, with some other office on Belmont. I'm not sure. I forget who it was, but they put together a mindfulness thing that was once a week. And,
that's really cool.
And it was, I went the whole time they did it. I think I missed 1 week, but it never got more than a couple people. But like you said, those couple minutes that I was up there, it definitely made me feel better and, kind of relax. And I was, because I was even going to them, I was more conscious of it.
Yeah.
And, I wish it would have caught on a little more, so they would have kept doing it, I suppose.
I think that's important, too, in every profession, but especially with, I've read articles, I'm sure you have, about attorneys and, mental health rates, so that's hopefully something people can get a habit of, because it is hard work. I know even with this first internship, I could see how, this is a lot, and it's hard to not take it home with you when you think about the stack of to-do lists you have the next day.
Well, and mindfulness is work. Practice it takes practice to do it.
Yeah.
And so it is tough when it's the end of the day and you want to just scroll on Instagram or watch Too Hot to Handle, whatever it is you do for fun.
Yeah.
Now I've exposed what I do for fun.
Oh, it is a good show though. It is a good show. I'll admit that.
I just started season 3, so I don't know what happens.
Awesome. It's like my girlfriend watches The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
Yeah.
And I was never really into that, but it's it's her thing. I'll let her put it on Tuesdays. Then I'm over in at the kitchen table, and I'm like, she said what? I'm like.
The similar thing happened to me, to the point where I started running a fantasy Bachelor.
Oh, that's cool.
League.
That's cool.
But then it actually became too much, and now we haven't watched it in about 18 months.
It is a lot. I didn't realize
it's constant.
It is constant. I didn't realize that they churn them out that fast too. Yeah. I didn't watch it growing up, but I'd seen the commercials. Yeah. And I just assumed it was once a year. But no, it's Survivor level of 42 seasons.
And what? Because it's The Bachelor,
Bachelorette,
and Bachelor in Paradise, and one of them is always on.
Exactly, which is smart marketing. I think it's smart for them to be we gotta keep one going all that time. But,
yeah.
So, sweet. Going into our last question, you got this final year left. What do you want to get out of it, either personally, professionally, emotionally?
So, I think a couple things. I'd like to get more practice writing and doing oral argument, kind of like, those more like rote skills. So I'll do moot court again this year. And I'll be writing our brief in the fall, and I don't know exactly, but hopefully in the spring do something competition wise. I feel like at this point I know most of my class, to the point where I at least would feel comfortable probably approaching most of them and asking them dumb question type thing. But I don't know, obviously, any of the incoming 1Ls,
right.
And a very small list of 2Ls. And to the over the past 2 years, kind of with my field placements and things, you run into the same people in Nashville. It's not a big legal market. And I do feel like I know most of my class, but like your class and the incoming 1Ls, I'll be practicing with you guys too.
Exactly, right.
Right now it feels very segregated because it's 1L, 2L, 3L. But we're practically all the same.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to get to know more of the 2Ls and 1Ls.
Yeah.
Because, 3 years from now, we'll all be peers.
Exactly.
We'll all be, new kids past the bar. And so, I just think the more people and, can rely on and call up and ask questions, I think the better off everyone will be. Yeah,
that's really important. Like, you don't want to burn bridges in this profession. There might be other professions where you can burn bridges. Maybe if you're a banker and you're like, I hate this guy that works at Chase Bank or whatever, like, but you're not like, interacting with them on a daily or weekly, monthly basis. So that's super important. And also just building that, like you're saying, a relationship network, like, it might end up like you need a favor, like you need like, hey, can you give me advice on this or whatever, like someone someone who took a class that you couldn't take or whatever. So
and some of the people that we go to school with someday might be a client. Maybe they go work in house and they remember Jordan was great in whatever class, and I know he's at firm X and they do that work. Like, I should give him a call. Because even if he doesn't do it, he knows somebody.
Exactly.
And so I do think that kind of just like getting to know everyone.
Yeah, and I think too, I say this because I think we have some alumni who are running for judgeships. On the bench. So like some of our classmates might be fellow judges that you stand in front of one day. So you definitely don't want to burn those bridges.
Yeah, and obviously Professor Usman.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
I think that's great for the school. Great for him. Very very happy for him.
He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I would just sit there in Con Law 1 and be like, wow, I could just like half the time I have no idea what's going on, but like. He sounds smart, and he was always really caring. Like, he would have those weekly review sessions or whatever, which is awesome.
He knows more about the Constitution, and he knows more about, like, any single topic. I feel like he knows more about than I know about everything combined.
Yeah. So I am lucky that I got to at least take one section with him. So, which is great. I'm going to use his knowledge forever, but...
Yeah, no, he's great, and hopefully someday we'll each practice before him, and
exactly. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? Sweet. Well, awesome. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate taking the time. And
of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.